Picture this: you're sitting at the dinner table, dessert plates still warm, and the conversation drifts from vacations and grandkids to the future. Suddenly, the room gets quiet. Talking about inheritance and money with adult children often carries a weight no one wants to touch. But what if those talks could feel less like a courtroom and more like a family story being written together? Today we'll explore gentle, practical ways to talk with your adult children about inheritance without letting drama take the spotlight. Starting with the why instead of diving straight into the numbers changes the entire tone of an inheritance conversation. When families jump immediately into details about bank accounts, property values, or percentages, emotions can quickly run high. Numbers can feel cold, transactional, or even competitive if they're introduced too early. But when the conversation begins with the deeper reasons behind your decisions, it invites your children into your perspective, rather than putting them in the position of reacting. For example, you might say, "I want to make sure everyone feels cared for long after I'm gone," or "I want to honor the sacrifices our family made to build what we have." These statements are about love, legacy, and values, not money. They set a foundation that helps your children understand the bigger picture before details are discussed. This approach can feel a little like telling a story rather than handing over an instruction sheet. Think of the times you've explained why a family recipe matters or why a certain holiday tradition continues even when schedules are busy. The why behind those choices makes the tradition meaningful. In the same way, framing inheritance as part of your life story, whether that's the years of hard work, the lessons learned about saving, or the hope that siblings stay connected, helps the discussion feel personal and human. It's less about dividing and more about continuing. When children understand the heart of the matter, they may also be more patient with choices that might otherwise cause friction. For instance, if one child is given responsibility for managing a family home, explaining that decision through the lens of trust and practical capability may feel very different than simply stating it without context. Leading with values also reassures your children that your decisions were made thoughtfully and fairly, not hastily or with favoritism. This way of beginning doesn't just reduce drama, it creates a shared sense of purpose. Instead of seeing inheritance as the end of something, your children may see it as a continuation of what you've always valued. Whether that's unity, generosity, or simply making sure things are clear and organized, the why reminds everyone of the love that underpins the decisions. And in the end, that reminder may be more comforting than any number on paper. When it comes to inheritance, handing over a set of instructions may feel efficient, but it often leaves out the most important piece: the human story behind it all. Families don't bond over paperwork, they bond over memories, milestones, and the experiences that shape them. Using stories in these conversations transforms what could be a tense or sterile exchange into something warmer and more meaningful. Imagine telling your children, "This house wasn't just a purchase. It was the place where we hosted birthdays, celebrated graduations, and survived tough winters together." That kind of framing adds depth to the decision and reminds them that what you're leaving isn't just an asset, but a chapter of their own lives. Stories also act as bridges when emotions get complicated. A son or daughter might wonder why you're leaving certain items to specific people. Instead of stating, "Your sister will have the quilt," sharing the background. "Your grandmother stitched this quilt by hand, and your sister was always the one who sat with her learning those skills," helps everyone understand the reasoning. It shifts the inheritance from a matter of ownership to one of connection. In many cases, these stories soften disappointment and create appreciation where resentment could have taken root. There's also something timeless about oral storytelling. Before wills and estate plans existed, Families passed on values, wisdom, and even survival strategies through stories told at the table or by the fire. Reviving this practice in the context of inheritance is not only effective but natural. It reminds your children that what they're inheriting is more than material. It's the essence of who you are and the life you built. A letter describing how you saved for your first piece of land, or a recorded memory of why you chose a certain charity speaks louder than a list of instructions ever could. What's powerful about this approach is that stories can linger long after details are forgotten. Years later, your children may not recall exact percentages or technicalities, but they will remember the way you explained how your values shaped your decisions. They'll remember the pride in your voice as you recounted the effort it took to build a home, or the warmth when you described a family heirloom. In that sense, your story becomes its own inheritance, something that continues to guide, comfort, and inspire long after the paperwork is settled. Involving your adult children in conversations about inheritance doesn't mean handing over the decision-making, but it does mean creating space for them to feel heard. Too often, parents finalize every detail behind closed doors and then present it like a finished contract. While that may feel efficient, it can also leave children feeling blindsided, confused, or even left out of a story that also belongs to them. Instead, consider approaching the discussion with curiosity, asking questions like, "What are your thoughts about the family home?" Or, "Are there items that hold special meaning for you?" Opens the door for dialogue. Even if you don't follow every suggestion, the act of listening communicates respect, which can reduce misunderstandings later. This approach can be compared to planning a family holiday. If one person simply books everything and announces the plan, the trip may still happen, but it often lacks a sense of shared ownership. When everyone gets to contribute, choosing a destination, suggesting activities, the trip feels more meaningful. Inheritance talks work in a similar way. Involving your children helps them understand the process, not just the outcome, and it strengthens the feeling that this is a family matter, not a unilateral decision. Inviting their input also helps reveal perspectives you may not have considered. One child may care less about financial assets and more about sentimental belongings. Another might feel strongly about preserving a family tradition tied to a particular property. These insights can guide you in shaping a plan that reflects not only your wishes, but also the family's shared values. Even when you cannot accommodate every request, acknowledging their feelings often matters more than the decision itself. There's a surprising side effect, too. Involving your children may reduce conflict between siblings later. If they've already had a voice in the conversation, they're less likely to argue afterward about fairness or intent. They know the reasoning, they've been part of the dialogue, and they carry fewer doubts about your motives. In a way, you're not just dividing assets, you're modeling how to handle sensitive conversations with respect and openness. Ultimately, involving your children shifts the inheritance talk from being a cold handover to a collaborative family exchange. It reinforces trust, nurtures connection, and allows your decisions to be seen through the lens of shared understanding rather than surprise. By treating them as participants instead of passive recipients, you honor both the family's past and its future. When people think about inheritance, the focus often lands on money, houses, or investments, but the truth is that emotional currency carries just as much, if not more, weight. These are the items that may have little financial value, yet hold a lifetime of meaning. A quilt passed down through generations, a box of handwritten letters, or even a simple set of kitchen tools can feel priceless to the child who connects those objects with love, comfort, or memories of family traditions. Acknowledging this emotional currency during inheritance talks shows your children that you see the full picture, not just the numbers on a page. ignoring these meaningful items can create more tension than the division of wealth. Imagine a family where siblings quietly resent each other because no one ever clarified who would receive their mother's wedding ring or their father's record collection. These unspoken expectations can lead to hurt feelings that last for decades. By naming the emotional value of certain belongings in advance, you give space for your children to voice their attachments and for the family to work through those feelings with honesty. It's not about avoiding conflict altogether, but about recognizing that the smallest objects can carry the heaviest memories. Talking about emotional currency also gives you a chance to share the stories behind the objects. A ring isn't just jewelry. It might represent your parents' perseverance through hard times. A worn cookbook isn't just paper and ink. It may symbolize the countless meals and conversations that shaped your family. When you highlight the meaning behind these items, you're passing on more than a possession. You're passing on the story that makes it significant. This transforms the inheritance from a transaction into a legacy that continues to connect your children long after the practical matters are settled. Another benefit of addressing emotional currency is the opportunity to prevent unnecessary guilt or regret. Children often feel pressure to hold on to everything after a parent passes, fearing that letting go means dishonoring their memory. By openly discussing what holds emotional weight and what doesn't, you free them to treasure the most meaningful pieces without carrying the burden of everything else. This reassurance can be one of the most generous gifts you leave behind. In the end, acknowledging emotional currency ensures that inheritance is not just about wealth, but about the threads of love, memory, and shared history that truly bind a family together. Conversations about inheritance often carry a heaviness that everyone can feel but no one wants to name. It's natural. Talking about money, aging, and what happens after we're gone stirs up discomfort. That awkward silence at the table, the way eyes drop to the floor, or the quick change of subject all show how uneasy the topic makes people. But instead of avoiding it, sometimes the healthiest step is to normalize the awkwardness. Simply saying, "I know this isn't the easiest conversation, but it matters to me that we have it together," acknowledges what everyone is already feeling. By putting the tension into words, you diffuse some of its power. This approach is similar to addressing an elephant in the room. Once you point it out, everyone can breathe a little easier because the unspoken no longer hangs over the group. Your children may even feel relief that you broke the ice, since many times they're unsure whether it's appropriate to ask questions or express concerns. Naming the discomfort gives permission for honesty. It turns an intimidating subject into a shared challenge, rather than a burden each person carries silently. Normalizing awkwardness also builds trust. When your children see you leaning into a difficult subject with openness, they may feel encouraged to respond in the same way. This creates space for laughter, for small jokes, or even for a light-hearted comment that softens the heaviness. Families often discover that the hardest part is simply starting, and once the first words are spoken, the rest flows more naturally. You don't have to have all the right words or a polished script. What matters is your willingness to show vulnerability. There's also a powerful message hidden in this practice. By facing discomfort now, you protect your family from even greater pain later. Avoiding the talk might feel easier in the short term, but it leaves room for confusion, disagreements, and hurt feelings when you're no longer there to clarify. By braving a little awkwardness today, you're sparing your children from much heavier conflict tomorrow. That in itself is a gift. In the end, embracing the awkwardness reframes the conversation. It's no longer about trying to make everything smooth and perfect, but about being real, present, and united in working through something important together. The awkwardness doesn't have to be a wall. It can be the doorway that leads to honesty and deeper connection. Choosing where to have a conversation about inheritance can make a bigger difference than most people realize. Sitting around the same dining table where family tensions have played out in the past may bring back old dynamics and unspoken rivalries. A child who has always felt overshadowed might slip into that role again, or an old disagreement could quietly resurface. By shifting the setting to neutral ground, you can help reset the emotional tone. A favorite park bench, a cozy cafe, or even a walk through a garden can encourage everyone to listen more openly. The change of scenery sends a signal that this conversation is not a fight to be won, but a moment to be shared. Neutral ground doesn't always have to mean a public place. Sometimes inviting a trusted friend, counselor, or financial advisor into the discussion provides the same effect. Their presence can act as a gentle referee, helping to keep the focus on listening instead of reacting. Children may feel more comfortable expressing concerns when there's an outside party to balance the emotions. For parents, having a neutral listener can also ease the pressure of carrying the whole conversation alone. Think of it like family holidays. When gatherings take place in one sibling's home year after year, old patterns can dominate the atmosphere. But when the family rents a cabin or meets in a different city, those routines break down and fresh connections are possible. Inheritance talks can benefit from the same reset. Meeting somewhere different helps remove the invisible weight of history, allowing everyone to engage with a clearer perspective. This approach also demonstrates thoughtfulness. By choosing a space where people can feel calm and safe, you're showing your children that their comfort matters as much as your decisions. It communicates that the goal is harmony, not control. Even something as simple as taking a walk while talking can reduce defensiveness. Side-by-side conversations often feel less confrontational than face-to-face ones. Ultimately, considering neutral ground is about creating conditions that make it easier for honesty to flourish. It doesn't erase the difficulty of the topic, but it lowers the barriers that often keep families from talking openly. A new setting can turn what might have been a tense meeting into a shared moment of clarity, helping your family focus less on where they disagree and more on what truly matters, staying connected. When people hear the word inheritance, they often think first about money, property, or material possessions. But the truth is, the most lasting legacy rarely comes from financial wealth. What children and grandchildren carry forward with them are the stories, traditions, values, and lessons that shaped their family identity. Leaving space for legacy beyond money means recognizing that your life's impact cannot be captured on a balance sheet. It's about choosing to pass down the parts of yourself that will live on in memories, habits, and rituals long after material things are gone. This might look like writing letters to your children and grandchildren, sharing wisdom, or recounting moments that defined your journey. It could be recording family recipes, so future generations can taste the meals that once gathered everyone around the table. Even something as simple as telling the story of how you and your spouse first met, or what you learned during a difficult season, can become a treasure that outshines anything stored in a bank account. These acts give your family something deeper to hold on to, a sense of belonging and continuity. One overlooked gift is documenting skills or hobbies that were part of your life. Teaching a grandchild how to garden, repair something by hand, or play a favorite song ensures those pieces of you continue. A photo album, scrapbook, or short video diary can capture these details in a way that feels alive. When future generations flip through them, they don't just see objects, they see resilience, humor, kindness, and the values that defined you. Focusing on legacy beyond money also reduces the pressure around dividing assets. When your children know they are inheriting not only things but also stories, traditions, and guiding principles, They are less likely to measure love through financial distribution. It shifts the focus from who gets what to what do we all carry forward together. That can strengthen bonds rather than strain them. In the end, wealth may fade or change hands, but the intangible gifts, laughter, wisdom, rituals, and values, become the threads that tie generations together. By leaving space for these legacies alongside financial planning, you give your family an inheritance that time cannot diminish, something they can lean on in moments of joy and in times of challenge. This is the kind of inheritance that truly lasts. Talking to adult children about inheritance isn't about handing down wealth. It's about handing down peace, clarity, and a sense of togetherness. If you've had one of these talks with your family, what worked and what didn't? Share your story in the comments. Your experience may be the exact encouragement another family needs. And if you found this helpful, consider subscribing for more conversations on family, legacy, and retirement life.